Hello and welcome to another episode of the Whole People Group podcast. Whole People, we recognise that organisational excellence is deeply entwined with the well-being of its people. Our mission is to seamlessly integrate well-being with performance because we understand that when individuals thrive, so does an entire organisation. Today, I am joined by Nikki Clements, who is a career and leadership coach. She's one of our associates. She's been with us since before the launch, and Nikki's doing some amazing work with us at the moment, helping us with our offer, with retreats, helping women come back into the workplace, mothers specifically. Nikki, I've been really looking forward to talking to you on the podcast, and it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Simon. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, always enjoy our conversation.
So, Nikki, as you know, we're Whole People Group, and we don't shy away from the struggle and the wins. And sometimes when I go watch podcasts, people talk about just the highs. We don't go into the lows. And obviously, what shapes what we do and the wisdom that we have to bring is some of the experiences we've had. Maybe you could just tell the listener a little bit about where you've been and how you found yourself here.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Simon. So previously to becoming a coach, sort of supporting women in these pivotal moments in their lives, my background is marketing. So I did 15 plus years across various marketing roles. I loved what I love the creativity. I love working with people. But the bit I loved the most was working alongside others and developing them and sort of identifying where they could grow, identifying where their struggles were and supporting them through it. I then had two gorgeous kiddies who are a little bit bigger now, but when going back to the workplace, I identified so much more with the fact that so many women either have to A, change their working patterns, B, change roles, C, leave altogether, or even take a step down and feel like they have to do a company a favour by accepting less. And unfortunately, so many people that I knew, either friends or within my own sort of professional network, were going through this. And I just felt so strongly in the fact that I wanted to be a part of that change. I'm not going to sit here and go, I'm going to change it all. And I feel very, very fortunate that there's huge voices out there as well that are supporting that effort to change this. So I basically went about retraining and really honing what I wanted to do and how I wanted to kind of come across and who I wanted to support. And within that, opened up loads of conversations, again, with people who were going through that struggle. And the more I spoke and the more I could identify my story and my feelings with a lot of these women, incredible women who got to incredible heights in their career, and they thought that it was actually the two can't exist together. And I feel so strongly, and I even feel so strongly now, that actually they absolutely can. And we'll talk about that, I guess, today as well. But everything comes with an element of sacrifice, and I think in hindsight that if I had someone to chat through some of those things with, which is I feel like I'm sacrificing, I don't know whether that's like my part within my family, then actually maybe my career would have been different. I'm very grateful now that that didn't happen, because I absolutely love what I'm doing. But that spurs me on to go, I don't want anyone to go through those things like I did and like so many other people do. I think there was a report recently that said 74,000 women every year are made redundant when on mat leave or being pregnant. And that is not okay, and we have to change that. It's huge. It's ridiculous. And I feel we all have, whether you are a mother, whether you are a parent, whether you are a friend of someone who's going through this, whether you're a line manager, whether you're a CEO, like we all have a part to play in making that change. So I feel incredibly passionate about this.
That's an unacceptable number, isn't it? Like that's not. If it was 10,000, it would be way too many. 74,000 is just an atrocious. I think that's 74,000 families. That's 150,000 kids or 100,000 children. Like the ripple effect of that is astonishing. You putting together some great work with my wife Jess, who I know is also inspired to get stuck into the postpartum journey and to be there for women during that time, because we as a family were, I say we, I didn't go through the biochemical part of it that Jess went through, but we were completely blindsided and not prepared for these shifts. You know, Jess gave birth to twins that goes through, you know, maybe even from the moment we decided we wanted to have children, you know, you can sort of trace it back to these incremental shifts that happen in the body and the mind and the emotions and culturally and so, and the whole way along we felt like we were learning as we were going along. And the one thing we know is it's not understood or appreciated what goes on inside a woman's body to be able to create life. Like, it's just amazing what happens, but the shifts and the changes, I can't even imagine how that must translate to like going back into the workplace, the lack of empathy and understanding that even I had. And I feel like I'm a reasonably open person. It just feels to me that we might be scratching the surface. This must be a really big problem.
Absolutely. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. And I think quite often, and you know, I had these experiences where there's this language that's used around like, well, oh, do you feel like you're back? And you know, like you just alluded to, Simon, having a child, you change, your identity changes, you physically change, your hormones are raging, they're all over the place. Whether you take 3 months maternity leave, a year, or 5 years, your hormones at all of those places are all over the shop. And for someone to turn around and be like, okay, cool, right, wrap that bit up now, here we go. Too many people are going back, basically hiding the fact. I think, you know, there's that sort of quote that quite a few people use, which is, we go to work pretending not to be mothers, and then we're mums pretending not to work. And that's a huge, you know, a struggle, a battle constantly in our own brains. I mean, show me a mother that sleeps very well when their child, even if their child's asleep, you know, mums, like, as soon as, I mean, I'm guilty of this, as soon as you lie down in bed, you're like, ding, your whole to-do list is flying around your head. And it's not because your child's awake, it's because of the mental overload and overwhelm that we have to sit with. But it's to your point, it's huge. Going back to work, there needs to be more. And we can talk about, you know, us as individuals, as mothers, and what we can do, what's within our control of doing that. And that's a lot of the work that I do with Jess as well as part of Whole People. But it also goes back to, how can organisations learn more in this space? How can line managers feel prepared? And I don't really want to sit here and kind of badmouth line managers, actually, because a lot of these people who are managing people coming back from mat leave, people coming back from compassionate leave, whatever the situation of an individual is, they are overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're having to juggle a billion things. So how can we go out and go, actually, we recognise you're a whole person in all of this. You've got all of these other struggles, but how can we give you what you need to have the right conversation? We're kind of doing ourselves a little bit out of business by doing that, but equally, we're recognising the fact that work and life have to coexist together. So yeah, I mean, I think this is just, like you say, we're scratching the surface. This is just the start. There's so many things that we can do to support that, for sure.
I think, you know, the challenge on, if I come into like the CFO, right, like he's the guy who just I mean, I'm not, you know, generalizing too much, but it's just about the balance sheet and the money and the productivity. And if you take all of that out of it, you can understand the businesses need to be successful, because if it's not successful, no one gets paid, right?
Absolutely.
I think that there's a really deep dimension here, which I'm excited to bring to the fore with Whole People Group, which is, and I know this will speak to the solution. I don't think people realize what they'll have access to if they support their people. And I don't think there's anything more powerful on this planet than a mother. Right?
You know,
like I know that the amygdala grows 3 times in pregnancy. And Katya Graff, who's on our team, who does emotional intelligence, she told me that the amygdala is responsible for fear. So that's one of the reasons a mother's brain won't switch off, but it's also responsible for the positive side. So you feel everything more. And I remember what a very funny stand-up comedian once said, you know, his wife was pregnant at the time, and he was going through the hormonal storms. And he said, seriously, if anyone ever invades England ever again, just line the pregnant women up on Dover Castle, and they'll just
I
go,
love that.
bugger off.
Absolutely.
The power and the capacity that men and women who have access, who've got kids, and I think that there's a resource here that companies have no idea that they have access to. Like if you support, like if someone supports me and I'm able to be with my family, I will, you now have my loyalty, which becomes, so there's so much
Absolutely
gain from companies to really take care of their people, not just mothers.
I think actually on that, Simon, just really quickly, I think one of the things I do with a lot of my clients is, particularly if they've been out of work for a period of time, and unfortunately, by being out of work, they're on one side quite often being very much the caregiver, and that's an absolutely incredible role to have. But what that also does is the elements of self-belief, where how they feel about themselves, you know, the lack of confidence in some of these unbelievable women it's staggering. And so some of the exercises we do together is really unearthing, okay, cool, so let's think about this being like a corporate press release, you know, you're coming back, what are the things that what we're shouting about? And you know, you start the exercise and they're like, nothing, you know, I'm really good at changing a nappy, you know, and that's sounding like it's very like artificial, but these are the conversations that the level of belief that we as women potentially have about ourselves. And you dig into that more, and I'm like, okay, cool, so talk to me about these sleepless nights that you said, you know, how do you get on the next day? And actually you want to untap this unbelievable resilience in someone, you know, how super efficient someone is. Quite often organizations will say, you know, you want to get something done, you will ask a working mother to do it. That is why quite often women at work are feeling the pressure, because they're so bloody good at what they do. And you always give someone who's busy, you give them the most to do, because you know that they're so, you know, so efficient. So the skills that we gain from being parents, I'm not just talking about mothers, I'm talking about fathers, you know, as carers, we all have so many incredible qualities that we can take into the workplace. And like I say, that's, you know, unfortunately organizations don't see that. They see it as a person who in their end of year review rated, you know, either the top or the quartile, you know, quartile in an organization. It's not about that, it's about the individual.
I think the bullshit-ometer goes down too, doesn't it? When you go through like kids and all that, you just capacity to take bullshit just completely disappears. And that's quite a confronting thing for cultures that are built upon social niceties. And I think the authenticity that comes through when you become a parent, like you've just become less tolerant of your own bullshit, and you're less tolerant of other people's bullshit. Because you've got like toddlers who are just bullshitting all the time, and you have to constantly be authentic all the time, otherwise you can't get anything done. Really, because we're coming towards the end of the time, but we've got a longer podcast coming in, Nikki, at the River Group soon. You've spoken to a lot of the solutions there, which seems to be around empowerment and understanding and self-awareness. And I know that you are putting together a back to work mothers retreat. You also take mothers on a journey too. What is it during that journey that how is that geared towards the solution?
Yeah, so I think it's on different parts. I think it's on an individual part, it's identifying what that return to work is for that individual. So how do they want to create a successful return for themselves? Because what will be a successful return for Jess will be different to what I deem a successful return. So it's working that through. I think it's about identifying, like we just talked about, the areas of strength that we all have, but again, the differences as well. I think the other part of it is this community that you then create of incredible women sharing their experience. And that's really fundamental in what I do as well, which is we can talk about you as much as you want. And I love that. I love hearing about people, their stories, and where they need that help and support. But also it always comes down to who have you got by your side, who's cheerleading you, who's helping you. So that's a huge part of what I do. I think the other part of it as well is this manager capability gap that currently exists as well, which we talked about earlier on. So I do a lot around that as well, which is like, how can we train up our managers in a time efficient way as well, but also in a human way to say, we hear you, we see your struggles. These are the kinds of things that you need to be supporting your people with. And, you know, it's not okay that 85% of women within 3 years of returning back to work are stepping away from full-time jobs. Like that message to women, to men, to young kids is not okay. That, you know, it's not always about, I would say, Simon, it's not always about who's leaving, it's about who's watching. And as you know, we do have a retention crisis, and women and mothers form, as I've just alluded to, a huge part of that. So what are we doing to make sure that that's not, you know, that is not a problem? And the fact that, you know, when young girls, young junior women are growing up into a workplace, they feel like they're being seen, and they can visualize themselves in these roles because women are within these leadership roles. And we've made huge, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, we're not making progress. We're making progress as women, but you know, 30% of leadership roles are have women in them. That isn't enough, and unfortunately, with all the other stats we've talked through, there's a reason why that's not enough. And yeah, anyway, so there's all those things, and I feel like line managers are a really key part of that, and organizations and supporting their policy development within that is massive.
Brilliant. It's really exciting to bring this to people too, because it's so needed, and I think people don't realize the benefits that it's going to bring to them. Recently I've been coaching I've got a few younger men who I coach, and they're sort of 25, and they do this. I found myself, since becoming a parent, I don't really take people who haven't gone through the fire of that. I don't take them as seriously as people I know who have become parents, and I'm working on that, right? Because some people can't have kids, and some people like that. But there's a rite of passage element to this, where, you know, my teacher always told me that women go through two major rites of passage: becoming a mother and then menopause, and their nature's way of growing us up, right? And I think that, you know, the capacity to have grown-ups in your culture doing, you know, speaking as grown-ups to grown-ups, the only thing that can happen is, you know, productivity and retention and things like that, because I don't think people want to leave jobs. We deep down, I said this, you know, I think deep down we are loyal at the core. And it takes a lot for someone to leave something early. My last question, go on.
Simon, can I just say one thing on that?
Yes.
And this is about supporting mothers in particular that are going back, but I do think there is something that, you know, as you just said, not everyone is able or wants to have a child, or for whatever reason that part of rite of passage doesn't happen. But I think where we have a massive part to play as whole people, have a huge part to play in terms of supporting organisations, is around ensuring that there is a voice for everyone, and that we don't have to hide parts of ourselves to do well at work. So, and that could be, you know, just the fact that we can't, you know, maybe you've chosen not to have a child, or your part of your journey at the moment hasn't taken you down that path. Like, how can we support those people to have a voice in that, and to be seen in different, you know, again, like to be able to see themselves in different positions, and how do we support them in working through that as well? So yeah, I think this, like I say, is about working mothers, but I do think it's a huge thing that, again, needs to be tapped into.
If you're a leader of a team, you could see yourself as a mother or a father of that team, right? It makes you, you know, it's the same energy. A mother is someone to take care of, nurture, talent through. It's the same skill, you know, and people are generally like toddlers sometimes, right? And it's people have their own will, and they have their own. So right, last question. So there's a bit about, I haven't given you the background to this question because I like to put all the associates on the spot.
I love this.
So about 8-9 years ago, I had I was more than a near-death experience. I actually fully left my body, and it's a long story, I'm talking about enough time, but I fully left my body. I was sick, and I died for a moment, right? And as I was dying, and I grabbed my phone, I had two things that were going through my mind. One was my relationships weren't in the place I wanted them to be in. And I was dying with regret, right? The next one was I had nothing to say. And so I found myself, as I was dying, grabbing my phone and trying to leave a voicey behind. So there's two things that came to me was my relationships, and I felt like I hadn't found my voice, and I couldn't. I kept quoting like quotes I'd read. I had nothing that was mine, and that's geared the rest of my life because I came back to my body and I knew I had a chance, and I've been trying to repair my relationships and find my voice since. So my question for you is, okay, we're going to go, there's whole people group, so we don't muck around. You're dying, obviously. You're dying, you're on your deathbed, you grab your phone and you've got 10 seconds and you've got to leave a voicey on your phone as you're taking your dying breath. What do you say?
This is a test run, and you have a chance to just live and be happy. So do that.
Brilliant.
It's not a test run, and I think you just spoke about a very emotional point in your life. Thank you for sharing that with me. I think we unfortunately have all experienced whether people that we've lost or moments when we felt really, really, incredibly lost ourselves. And actually within those moments, you realise what can bring back up is seeing the opportunity that now exists, that this isn't a test run, Simon. We got a chance to change it for our kids. So let's just do that.
Bloody brilliant. Thank you, Nikki. Right, I
You're
look forward
welcome.
to a longer podcast that we'll get done soon.
Yeah.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing what you do with us.
Oh, thanks, Simon. It's a pleasure.
Okay. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.